All right. Hi, Mrs. Reynolds. Thank you for joining us. We are going to get started. Welcome to our webinar. This is the Swivl in the Field and Beyond webinar. We are going to be featuring Dr. Venicia Ferrell and Dr. Jennifer Thomason today. Before we get started, though, I do want to say a quick happy Teacher Appreciation Week to all of you here. I am a former teacher. Many of us who work at Swivl have come from the classroom. So we want to just say thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day, for being here. Every week should be Teacher Appreciation Week. We appreciate all that you do. You are so important. I'll introduce myself briefly. My name is Allie Sparber. I am a member, yes, let's go teachers. I am a member of the customer success team here at Swivl, where I was privileged to get to actually meet our two presenters today through my role here at Swivl. I met them while they were, Dr. Thomason still at Hampton City Schools, but when I first met Dr. Ferrell, she was there as well. She is now a researcher with the Center of Educational Partnerships at Old Dominion University. Dr. Thomason is a digital learning specialist at Hampton City Schools, and they're both wonderful women with such great insight and innovative strategies and ways that they've used Swivl and contributed to kind of spreading the word about our wonderful tools here. So with that, I'm going to say Happy Teacher Appreciation Week one more time, and I am going to pass it over to these two lovely ladies to introduce themselves and go ahead and get started. Thanks so much for being here, everyone.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Venicia Ferrell.
And good afternoon, everyone. I am Jennifer Thomason.
And Allie did a really great job about telling me about what we've done and who we are. And you kind of see on the screen that we've got quite a few years in education. And my background, of course, has been a science teacher, gifted specialist, science supervisor in a few districts. And of course, in both of those districts, I did integrate technology in. And so integrating technology is not a new thing for me. And it's always been something that I've enjoyed doing in the learning. And so this was just kind of the next step in the evolution of being able to do that, especially given the current situation. When she met us, it was in the middle of the pandemic. So, yeah.
Yes, and so like Venicia was saying, Allie did a great job of introducing us. I've been in education for about 12 years, was a fifth grade teacher for about 10 of those, and currently a digital learning specialist with Hampton, which pretty much means I work with teachers with technology, specifically around instruction, and also working on a new virtual program. With that being said, we'll launch right in.
So we're going to kind of give you kind of just an idea of a little bit about what we did, and we'll start with the first wave, and then we'll go into the second wave and the third wave. And what you'll notice, the first wave was pretty much just us getting an introduction to it, and it started with the conversation because when the pandemic happened, we were, I just kind of reached out to a lot of my colleagues around the state and in other states just to find out what they were actually doing. One of the things that teachers kept saying was the fact that it was just really difficult to teach from their home, from wherever they were. And if the school had them coming into the classroom, it's kind of hard to teach to an empty classroom. But we were just trying to find a different way to make it engaging and exciting for teachers and for students again. I had a conversation with one of the colleagues, and he mentioned he was looking at different products. And one of the products he mentioned that they were looking at was Swivl. And I said, okay, well, cool. Let me look more into that and go from there. And so that was the discussion that happened with that. And from there, it was kind of like everything just happened really seamlessly. I did meet Allie, I met Jessica, I met a lot of different people there, but it was really, really neat because we ordered a couple of them, and I wanted to try it out with science teachers. And then I had a great group of teachers who would try lots of different things. And so we did get an introduction to what it would look like. And then we tried it out. And I had a couple of teachers try it out in their classroom. And they were just teaching at that point to just an empty room. Their students were all online. And so one of the teachers was like, okay, well, that'll be really good. And things are going well. And so we decided, kind of the buzz kind of picked up. And so we had people at district leadership team kind of talking about it, deputy superintendents and people like that, and they wanted to know more about it. So I said the easiest way to learn more about that was to kind of experience it. So we ended up having some of the coordinators and things like that come in and actually do a mock class. So one of my teachers decided, sure, I'll do a mock class for you. Jennifer and I were both students in the class. We didn't want it to be about us. We wanted it to be about looking at what it would look like in a real classroom. So we decided, let's do a mock shark dissection. And when I say mock science lesson, we actually had real sharks in the classroom doing the dissection, and it was great. And we had some people that were at home, some people that were in the person in the classroom. And so the teacher was able to walk around and move around and actually teach like a real classroom. And some of the students were in there because that was what we were transitioning to, was some students would be in person still in mass, other students would be at home and still virtual. And everybody loved it. They loved the interaction. They loved all of that. And one of the biggest quotes was from teachers were, I feel like a teacher again, because I'm no longer tethered to the front of the room. I'm wearing a marker. I'm able to move around the room. I have different markers set up around the room. And so at the very end, all the conversations were seamless. Everybody could hear it, whether they were in the classroom or they were at home, they could hear all the conversations. And from there, we kind of moved ahead and we started looking at purchasing some for secondary science classrooms and getting them out there, because at that point it became something that not only a few teachers had them, but then others started asking about them. I'd like to try one out. I'd like to use it in my classroom. And so it kind of evolved from there. And so then we had a professional development for some of our science teachers, because they were early adopters at that point, and just how they would use it. And one of the things that we kept talking about was, it doesn't have to be just in your classroom. You could do a science lesson from your street. You could do it from your yard. You could do it everywhere, because science is all around you. And so in thinking that way and getting them the freedom and permission, I had teachers that were setting up their Swivl and doing a science lesson from their garden, because it was a biology teacher. And as they're talking about that, they're actually showing real science. I had another one that's talking about weathering and erosion. So she set it up on one of her side streets in her neighborhood and actually walked through examples, and then encouraged students to go out in their neighborhood as they started looking, around. And they started finding examples of weathering and erosion. So they would bring in the examples or take pictures of it and upload it. So at that point, learning became fun again. And it wasn't just sitting at home looking at a screen and trying to understand the content. And of course, then the next step from that was to start bringing other areas in and start talking about what other areas look like. And I'll let Jennifer talk a little bit about what that looked like before we go into wave 2.
Sure. Yes, this is kind of really where I took more of a role with the integration of the other content areas. So when Hampton City Schools decide to kind of go full force with Swivl, we worked closely with Swivl to kind of design a professional development for all our teachers. And we went in there and we kind of worked one-on-one with them to kind of show them how to set it up and how to use it. And it was really cool to see that we had some teachers who would dress their Swivl up and, make it like a student in the classroom, name the Swivl, especially in the elementary grades, the kids really got into naming what their Swivl was. But one of the biggest things that kind of stuck out to me was students that were at home that maybe couldn't come into the physical classroom. Or like, I feel like I'm a part of the classroom again. I don't just feel like, I'm just sitting staring at you as like a bystander. I'm involved too, which kind of goes back to what Venicia was talking about too, with that lab that we did too, having a dissection happening, but our kids at home are really invested and involved as well. So there was some really great feedback from both teachers and from students and how Swivl was used. And we saw it being used in different ways. At one point I saw Swivl kind of almost act like a student in itself. So it would kind of, be in the group sitting next to another student, so that the student at home was like on the Swivl and they could communicate back and forth. So that was really, really cool. And we, like I said, we implemented it in a kind of professional development series out to our teachers and really help set up that training so that they were comfortable with it and using it in the classroom. So that being said, we're going to move on to the second wave and really how Swivl was used in the field and then kind of back to the classroom too. So we will start with Swivl in the field at the Chrysler Museum. So this is a combination of CTE and science. Venicia, do you want me to keep going or you want to take this one?
It's completely up to you.
So you go ahead. You know more about the Chrysler Museum experience. I mean, obviously I was there.
Well, one of the things I will say that we kind of laugh about is, and you can actually see Jennifer there as well in the picture, and I'm there as well. And so we brought in teachers, but we wanted to, at this point, expand it. You heard me earlier talking about from the secondary standpoint. Now at this point, we have elementary teachers, middle school teachers, and high school teachers there, and not just science teachers, but also CTE teachers that are there. And these are just people who are doing something different, because we went to a glass studio in the Chrysler, which just happens to be near us in Norfolk, Virginia. And what was really cool about this experience is it ties to a lot of content areas. The CTE teacher is a materials processing teacher. So it ties to content that they teach as well. But for science, it definitely did. And so it was one of those concepts. And it was just another experience of getting it out and being able to showcase what it looks like in the real world and being able to bring real and authentic examples in. And so, of course, we took teachers, they made different things in the glass studio, and you can actually see them. I don't know if that day they were making hearts or what they were making that day. We've gone a couple of times, and so we've all made different things there. And so what we did was we just kind of set it up and we kind of talked about it from that perspective. I can say the CTE teacher went back later and he recorded an entire class. He did it live. He just had his class click on the Zoom link. They were in class and he was at the Chrysler doing a live lesson talking about that right then and there. And so as things happened, they were interacting with people. And it's almost like that wonderful virtual field trip. It was a virtual field trip, but the students didn't get that experience. And if it's one of those things that they were hoping they would get an experience to be able to go to later. And so that's really, really neat and being able to see that. But that was just one of the different places that we went. Our next stop, I think. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that one, Jennifer?
Well, I was going to try to zoom in a little bit, but it kept forcing my slide back because we had in the chat, if we could make the images larger. But the only thing I was going to add was really, with Swivl, like Venicia was saying, that you can do almost like a live virtual field trip, or, you could go and record it ahead of time and still share. There's a couple of different options that we utilize with Swivl as far as virtual trips and instruction. And I'm not sure if I can make that larger. It keeps making me kind of go back and forth.
Oh, no problem.
All right. So our next we're going to, I guess, go through a series of where we use Swivl in the field and how it can be used in the field. So you saw at a museum, we actually took Swivl outside too, like legit outside, like on the sand next to the beach at Chippokes Plantation State Park. So we took this out there and we were able to discuss, different science concepts as far as erosion and weathering, and then, some more advanced high school science as far as, landforms and such. So here you see again just where we were, and we partnered this time with CTE Science and then my department's digital learning as well.
What was really neat about this one is they actually did a video as they were talking about it, and the video got saved and it got uploaded in the curriculum. So other teachers who weren't able to come out that day actually were able to use that as a showcase. And that was one of the other things that we were thinking about, because what you have here is you have a biology coach, you have a biology teacher, you have an assistant principal there, you have environmental science, and of course you do have, of course, the science at the time, the science supervisor, and of course you have the digital learning specialist there and the CTE teacher, and you can see a little bitty guy, and that's the CTE teacher's son, because it was a teacher work day. And it's funny how you get people to go out into the field and do different things on a day when they are usually, I need to be in the classroom and stuck on doing that. So it was just a really cool experience.
Yeah, and just a final thing to add to what was really neat about this too, with the markers that you can have with Swivl is we could, be videoing from pretty far away, and the markers would still track and pick up whoever was explaining, what the concept was behind us. So that was another really cool feature about that. Mm-hmm. And then we will jump to where we went to another state park. So kind of another example of where we're out in the field using our Swivl and making some of those real life connections for students. These are things that we could record ahead of time and share with, but also the capability of zooming in, as long as you have that Wi-Fi and that hotspot.
But I will say what was really neat about this one is the information that was learned on that trip. It allowed the teachers, when they came back, to actually set up an actual almost kind of like a mock dig. So one of the CT teachers built this huge sand pit, and they kind of buried some of the fossil examples they had. And then they had the students go out and they set it up with the Swivl again, because of course at this point, we still had some students in the classroom, some students are still virtual, remoting into class. And so they were able to log in to actually see the lesson that was taking place. And they were put into groups with their partners, which were actually students in person. And so they were able to kind of go through some of that and do some of that right there in the schoolyard, because that's where they built the actual pit. But this gave it a little bit more of a background and a setting.
Yeah, and I did try to make the pictures a little bit bigger, so I hope that helped. Let me know if it hasn't. And so then we're moving to another location of Falls Cape State Park. So this was kind of a scouting location to see, you know, what we could do here with Swivl, and the different kind of environments that we could look at. We actually did do a live kind of session here with Swivl in a Zoom call, and I'll let Venicia talk a little bit more about that.
What was really neat about that was just hearing the audio and finding out how clear it was, especially when you're at the beach. We did find out that being able to hear everything that was going on, it was a little distracting for the people. So we realized that would be one that you probably want to record ahead of time and then bring it into the classroom, just because it was very, very loud and was very windy that day. So just be mindful when you're taking it out in the field. That's one of the things you just think about. When we went to the other locations, all at Falls Cape State Park, they were different. And so that's one of the things that we've always told teachers: when you're going to take it out and you're going to do something like that, scout ahead, try the location out, because one of the things that you'll find about it is some of the locations are going to be better for those live streaming sessions than some of the locations. And you might need to do like a still video there and then have that as upload and have them watch it before or after.
And then another location that we went to was Hoffler Creek. So we actually took Swivl out, and we wore the markers, the microphones out in our kayaks, and had Swivl, you can kind of see posted up here in different locations to see if you could still track, you know, what we were saying as we're exploring the creek. And it picked up quite nicely. So just a couple of different pictures here showing the ways in which Swivl was used and how we kind of navigated that and used it out in the field at Hoffler Creek.
I will say, if you do want to be able to zoom in and look at some of the pictures, feel free to, like when you go on later and look at Twitter, all of the handles are there. So that way you can actually go in and actually see them and zoom in and out. But what was interesting about this one is, as we were talking about it, normally we're on land. And so we left the Swivl sitting on a pier. We're wearing the marker and we're paddling, and don't laugh. We're paddling in kayaks in different directions. And so we all were just in a canoe or in a kayak and having these conversations. And what was really neat about it is the sound all merged together at the very end for a final video. And you could hear all the individual conversations, no matter how far we'd gone. We were no longer in the screen of the video, but you could still hear all of our conversations. The picture in the middle, what's interesting about that, and you may not be able to see it, but you probably can see the words. We actually had a drone. And so we were looking at how to actually be able to include that kind of like drone footage in and actually talk about the actual space that we were in at that point too. So we went at it from air and we went at it from the water. So
Land, sea,
that's why we include that one. Yes, we got it all.
And I do think this presentation will be made available later too, if you want to take a closer dive into these pictures.
Yes.
And so now we're going to jump to Swivl in the classroom, kind of just pop it in to show kind of what it looked like, you know, that concurrent hybrid model that so many of us, you know, dealt with during the pandemic, where we had kids, you know, what the roomies and the zoomies, as they was so often called. So we had kids in the room and then kids in Zoom. So here you can see Venicia helping with the dissection, but, you know, the student has a Chromebook there because we are a one-to-one district. So all of our students have Chromebooks, where there is a student at home that is also there zooming into the dissection.
And if you notice, the one thing, if you've ever done a science lesson and doing a dissection, you notice the paper is missing. And the reason the paper is missing is because there is no paper. The student at home is actually giving the instructions to the other one. So they actually have an active partnership and they have to do that. The student in front of the whatever organism we're dissecting, I think that one's a turtle at the point, but we did block it out so you don't have to see that, especially for eating. But you can't see it, but that's all the student has. The student has all the equipment, the gloves, you know, the goggles, but they have no direction. So the person at home must guide the student in person into being able to do this. And so it was really, really neat. And I don't know if you can see it in this picture, but there are two swivels set up because one of the students needed a different kind of setup. So the student in the front in the maroon shirt has a swivel and she's wearing a marker. And so she's got her own special group of students that are, you know, kind of moving ahead, which that was really neat. And then the other swivel markers for the rest of the class. That is a way to actually do this. And what's really neat about it is that was differentiation occurring in the classroom. That group moved a little at a different speed than some of the other class members. So as the teacher's walking around and monitoring what's going on and helping and assisting, and she asked me to come help and assist that day, and I graciously did. It was a great day. We got out of the office, yay. But the group in the front, they were able to do that. So they had two swivels working, two different conversations markers. No one had a problem understanding, and it worked really, really well. So
yes,
that was something else we tried.
And I completely agree with what Anne has put in the chat, that, you know, both the Zoomies and the Roomies having ownership in that learning experience, really showing that true collaboration where, you know, one is not being left out just because they're not in the same location. So I think that's awesome.
And I will say that was one of the things that was always hard, is to try and make sure that everyone had that ownership and thinking about that. So it did require something a little bit different when thinking about what that looks like, and just able to keep them going with that. So how far apart do the markers need to be to avoid? Well, we tried that, and that's why one swivel was in the back of the classroom and the other one was in the front of the classroom. And it's a pretty decent sized room, but it's not a tiny classroom, but that allowed for it to not have the interference that you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think it too with the markers, it really depends on the lesson and what you're doing that day. I've seen in some classrooms that are smaller that the marker that teacher wears picks up pretty much everything, including, the teacher and then the side conversations that could be occurring. But, you know, in this case with the dissection and having those multiple groups and trying to be able to hear what's going on and all, setting those markers around helps too. And that's also a larger room. So it really depends on what you're doing. I just wanted to point out too, before we move to the third wave, that both in the first and the second wave, we did receive feedback, you know, really to help guide us of what we were doing next and what was working, what wasn't working, what was going well, what maybe we could help with, or what we could reach out to Swivl about to work on. So without further ado, I think we're moving to the third wave. And so I will go ahead and click there and we will start talking about STEM Imagined.
I will say that between the second and the third wave, that was my transition. The third wave, I am no longer at that point with Hampton City Schools, and I was actually with the Center for Educational Partnerships at Old Dominion University. But the great thing about that was that then brought a different element to working with teachers, working with Swivls, working with that. And that brought us to a kind of a makerspace environment. It's an innovation lab, which is the Brooks Crossing Lab. And that Brooks Crossing Lab had a lot of really different things. Thank you. And that's on the picture. So it's an opportunity center. And the great part about that is it's open to the public. But what we were doing during the pandemic is we were bringing in teachers, and all of this is everything that you're seeing there are teachers and students and groups and things like that that are working with it. And that's two different school systems. And the beat making one, that teacher is from a neighboring school division. And the other pictures that you actually see there are teachers that are from Hampton City Schools and I think maybe Suffolk Public Schools. But it was a great opportunity to be able to have them experience something new and different, and also be able to tie it to their curriculum. So Jennifer is going to talk a little bit more about this project, but I just wanted to say the great thing about that, it was an opportunity and a chance to bring teachers and students, once again, to a different experience, not just outside in the field, but now to a makerspace, because these were all things that they weren't able to experience in person at that time.
Yeah, so like Venicia was saying, this is a really wonderful experience to get our teachers out and to see some of the things that they could incorporate into their classroom, or even bring students to, you know, once the pandemic died down a little bit, where we could start taking kids places. However, Swivl was still in use. So what we had our teachers do in this case is they came in for a few sessions at Brooks Crossing, and then they learned about the different stations. But then they were tasked with creating lessons. And in those lessons, in one of them, they had to create a video showing how, as a teacher, they would use that station and how that lesson would go. And we used Swivl to record this because the teachers were able to move around the station, show exactly what was happening. And you can see here that this particular is 4th and 5th grade. So there were several lessons created using these different stations at Brooks Crossing. And then the video, the Swivl video here that she used. So she is holding the marker. I won't play the video for you now, but to show us how that station worked. I'm going to jump back to show you a few more other pieces of the SimImagine project, and then we'll kind of take a look at the website as a holistic. So that was elementary. Middle school was the same setup. So the teachers still came in. They got to figure out, how this could relate to their curriculum. They designed lessons, and then they also recorded a video using Swivl. You can see the marker right here that she's wearing to showcase that station and how it would be used. Yep, and thank you, Venicia. She dropped the link to the website so you can look at it on your own too. Mm-hmm. So that was middle school. So we had elementary, middle, and high school. So we looked K-12 for this pretty much, or at least upper elementary to 12. So here you see some biology and also some CTE. They also created lessons, did their video to show how things would work using Swivl. Yep. And let me go back here. So I'm going to go jump to the website for a second. We kind of took a peek at this and the different stations that Brooks Crossing offered. But once you're here, you can kind of see the different ways that we use, or kind of get more specific, how, and watch the video and use the lessons too, how the Swivl was used to record these. Of course, we also had our safety thing here from the Virginia Department of Education, because those stations, there were some safety things that we have to be aware of. But really, using the resources that we have in our community in combination with the technology that we have to really bring the best lessons possible and the best experiences possible, both for our teachers and for our students. And then I'm not sure I really missed any. Oh, we had the former First Lady come, and she participated in a few stations too, and we used Swivl to kind of document all of that as well. So we've used Swivl in the classroom, we've used Swivl in the field, we've used Swivl at multiple locations, as well now as a kind of a maker space area.
I figured you would appreciate that about the safety part of it. Yes, definitely.
Alrighty, and so I am going to jump to, I did that just for you, man. I'm going to jump to the Swivl at the Planetarium, where I think Venicia was going to elaborate a little bit more on that question that's in the chat too.
Yes, so there was a question in the chat, and John asked about using the Swivl in a GoPro type camera. And one of the things that we found was, we tried this out before actually doing that. And one of the things to let you know, and you saw some of the videos and pictures where we've tried out things. So before having the Swivl at the Planetarium and having classes remote in, that's what I'm showing right here. But what happened before all of that happened was there was an actual visit to the Planetarium to work out kind of the kinks and the bugs. And the whole idea behind a planetarium is you want the kids to get the dome shape feel. You want them to feel like they're in a planetarium and it's not just a screen. So the way to go about that, and that was the difficult thing for us, we tried the multicam angle in Swivl, and that worked really well. But what we also had to do was we ended up having to put almost like you said, a GoPro, like a different camera on the floor, and it was able to like zoom in and be able to capture the actual dome feel, so that whenever anything was on the actual the ceiling of the dome, we were able to put that in and merge that into the video. So, and we kind of highlighted the different videos throughout as we were, interacting with students and the Planetarium, and I was there that day as well. So I ran all the mechanics behind it. So I was able to switch from different views for students depending on what they were doing. But the great part about it is since the students could not come at that point, they were in the classroom, you can see them in their masks, their partitions, but they weren't able to do field trips. We were able to bring it to their classroom, and the students were able to ask any question, and they were ready. And then they literally were firing questions left and right. And so they had this wonderful experience there. And of course, it was geared to whatever grade level they were doing, but they were able to ask those kinds of questions they wanted to ask. And they were able to engage with the host of the Planetarium. They were able to ask those questions and get that, and they were able to tie it back to the content. And we also made sure that when we did this trip, that was what they were currently studying. And as a matter of fact, I think this was the introduction, and we did it with another class, which ended up being kind of like a culminating activity. So they definitely enjoyed it.
Yes, and I just to add to this, I think really that this opens up the door to, so many more virtual field trips. I mean, I know, in most schools, you're only allotted so many, or, for funding or whatnot. So this really brings experiences that students may not have the opportunity or can afford to do, and bring it to them, which I think is amazing and really eliminates that the equity divide. So Swivl, yeah, at the conservatory, or do you have?
Yeah, no, I was just going to answer John's question. We actually did the switching between that on just in Zoom. So we just connected the Swivl to the Zoom session. All the cameras had logged into that one, and we were just able to switch out and spotlight whichever camera we wanted to at that time. Does that help, John?
In Swivl, when you open the Swivl app, there's different kind of streaming platforms you can use. And with Hampton and with ODU, we've been using Zoom like we are today. But that really, like Venicia is saying, allows for the person that's kind of controlling the laptop to really determine which camera is being spotlighted, or if you're spotlighting more than one camera. I've had instances where teachers have a shared screen up, but they also want them to be able to see whatever's going on in the classroom. So having two things up, big screen at once for students. So really having a bunch of options there.
And I'm not gonna, the same thing happened at the conservatory, but what was neat about this is the biology coach wanted a time where teachers, we didn't want to pick and choose a class, because people at that point started to hear about it, and they were like, oh, I want to have a scientist in my classroom. I want them to kind of do that talk. So what we ended up doing, and we didn't want to put anybody behind, is we ended up having a one-on-one session. So I spent the day in the conservatory while the biology coach was at the school, and they had a one-on-one session. And basically she went through all the information that she needed him to address, ask the questions, and he was able to share all of that. And we were able to walk around. I will warn you, definitely dressed inappropriately for conservatory. I did not. I was completely sweating the entire time, but it was okay. The plants were happy, and that's all that matters. So I will say that's what ended up happening with this one. And the best part, you can actually see that on the bottom of the screen, it's actually swiveled. So that was the actual camera for that one. But we did save that, and it was actually put into the curriculum as well for teachers. So they were able to show that to all of their students, which answered other questions. And some teachers actually put it in for students to watch the video at home, but they pulled out sections of it. They did not pull out the entire thing and give that to the students to watch if they had to watch it at home.
Alrighty, so now we're taking you kind of away from kind of K-12 a little bit to kind of showcase how Swivl can be used at the higher ed level. So I will let Venicia take this one away.
One of the other things that I actually do is I sit on the STEM advisory board for the state. And we're in Virginia, so just letting you know. And there's the former first lady as well there. And we actually had, and this was us meeting, but this wasn't the full board meeting. Some of our members weren't able to make it. So one of the things that we wanted to do, and one of the STEM coordinator kind of heard about using this and asked me, would it be possible to do that or actually use the Swivl at a state meeting? And of course, it paired really well with the Zoom that was going on. People were able to move around, and we were able to have meeting groups, and we were able to talk, and everybody was able to participate again. And it did not keep anyone tethered to the front for the entire meeting, or we did not have to keep switching out. It was very seamless. And since the meetings have to be recorded anyway, placing the markers around the room made it very, very easy. But that was just another way to use it outside, still in the realm of education, but outside of K-12. Yes.
And before we go to the next thing, I'll click on it. But before I forget, something popped in my head that I would definitely want to mention. I know most of us are probably aware of a teacher shortage that's happening. And so we've used Swivl in some pretty inventive ways in the classroom, where we've had, classes that maybe have a substitute zooming in with Swivl to, a class that has the teacher in there. So we've kind of tried to navigate those issues, and using Swivl and Zoom and together has really kind of helped with that. So I want to point that out too, just being very creative with working with what we got to really make sure that all of the kids are getting the best instruction possible. And which kind of segues a little bit into this too. So using Swivl at the Mariners Museum in Newport News. Venicia, do you want to speak to this? And then I'll click play on the video.
Yes. So this was some of the research grant work that we do. We're working with, we have a grant and we're working with the Manners Museum in Newport News. And what was really neat is these were teachers, they were brought out to learn how to actually do some field work that they were going to be implementing with their students later that month. So the teachers came out for a day, and then they will be bringing their students out to the Manners Museum to plant eelgrass, to actually do some invasive species removal. Basically, the whole idea behind that is giving the teachers the training and the prep that they need up front, and to also kind of prepare them. But it was also kind of twofold because it served as a guideline, because one of the students that the adults that you see out there in full waders is actually a grad student. So he's a grad student that is learning to work with teachers. He's learning to train teachers, and he's also learning how to work with a K-12 environment as well. And so that's one of their culminating projects, is to do this kind of training for teachers and for students. And so he's got the teacher out there in waders, and they're going to learn how to plant eelgrass, because that's one of the events that the students are going to do. They've been growing it in their classroom all school year.
So I'm going to go ahead and try to play this video. I was just making sure my computer sound was shared in Zoom, and it wanted me to install something, which I did. So fingers crossed that it works. I'm curious why Zoom all of a sudden, with their updates wanted me to do that, but that's okay. So we're going to go ahead and play this, and please let me know if you can or can't hear it. And it does not look like, can you guys hear that? Because I definitely can't. Let me try. How about now? Okay, let me try this really quick. I'm going to stop share, and then I'm going to reshare. Sorry, you guys. Oh, Zoom. Okay. All right, let's try this again. I'm still not hearing anything.
I'm not either.
Oh, I'm sorry, you guys. But kind of narrating this, they're looking at the different things that they're finding in this creek. Venicia, you want to stop share and then reshare and see if it works on yours?
I can.
It's saying that it's sharing my sound, but you know how Zoom is sometimes.
I do.
It plays when I stop sharing. Super weird.
Oh, so the sound
Sorry,
is playing
guys.
now for you?
Yeah, it does it when I stop sharing. I think it has to do with Zoom updates and me.
All right.
Really being
Well,
behind
I
on the
pulled
latest
that
ones.
back up. Do me a favor. Go to
Yeah.
the Imagine site.
Yep. And share my screen on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That I can do. And thank you to those for in the chat that completely understand. We've all been there, right? Where Zoom decides to sometimes not play nice with us. So while Venicia is kind of getting that ready, I'll kind of take you back through this just a little bit and kind of guide you kind of how we're connected with ODU and the TSET program to really work with Brooks Crossings. This is where Venicia works. This is really kind of the foundation that kind of put everything together for our teachers in Hampton City Schools and multiple districts to really work at Brooks Crossing, and then of course with Swivl too. Did I stall long enough?
You did.
Yeah, all right, I'm gonna stop sharing and then let you reshare.
Okay, well, I can't share.
Oh no.
So did you stop?
I did. Yep. So you should be able
All right,
to now.
now I can. All right, we're good. Thanks.
Good. Yeah. No, thank you.
Well, let's see if it works.
Yes, I can hear it.
Hey!
You good? Okay. So, like I said before, we're just gonna be putting. All for the camera. All for the camera. Okay. So, there's two in here that we're gonna be planting. But all we're gonna be doing is. See, these ones are super. You wanna hold that? So all you're going to be doing is you're going to be sliding the roots through the little incision in the coconut fiber mat. This one I didn't take apart. I'm actually just going to be planting them together in one single mat. See if it helps a little bit more. These roots are not that big.
So the really great thing there too that I'd like to point out is how clear that audio is from him kind of, way over there wearing that marker.
Now, what was really important is he's not wearing a marker.
Oh, it's picking up from her.
It's picking up from the lady in the blue who's closest to the camera. So it's picking up, yes, you hear the wind, but you're hearing him that far away very clearly. That it's almost like he's wearing a marker, but he's not. She's the only one wearing a marker.
There we go. Yeah, so you're just gonna have the coconut fiber mats. Just gonna put them in. The wire is extremely cold right now.
And we won't make you have to listen to all of that, but just letting you know that all of the videos that are on the Swivl, the STEM Imagine website, are done with the Swivl, and you actually see the teachers wearing the markers as they're talking about it, and they're doing that. One of them, which I particularly like, is the 8th grade one. She actually, you can see her moving around. She moves from the 3D printer across the room to another table where she had kind of her demo set up for students. And the really neat thing about that is, if you're in your classroom and you're thinking about doing it, or if you're doing any curriculum work for your division, the great thing is sometimes teachers it's one thing to read the curriculum, but it's another thing when you can embed a video like that. And so one of the uses I thought was really neat is teachers that do that, they're using the Swivl and they're able to walk around the room and actually record almost a guideline. So it changes how new teachers think about doing it, or it changes how a veteran teacher, when they're learning something new from another teacher, can actually do a lab, how to set it up, how to do that, how to move around. And if they record their lesson that day and people see that, then they're able to actually facilitate it better in their classroom. I will say the thing that is really neat about all of this is the fact that, and hopefully in about 2 weeks, we'll be doing that same experience, but not there, but on the western part of the state with students in the field. So, and we will definitely be taking the Swivl there because all of the groups won't be able to make it out, but 2 of the 4 high schools in that school division will be able to make it out. So I think it'll be a great experience, and they'll be able to showcase that across the entire district. And that's a completely different district, but that's one of the things that I enjoy about the job that I have now that I get to do. Sorry, did not mean to go there. But we are kind of almost at the end of what we needed to share, and we're at the point where we're ready to answer any questions that you have of us. And so I did want to throw on the screen, there's my email, there's of course my handle for Twitter, and of course there's Jennifer's as well as hers. So I'm going to take a quick screen capture if you want on that, and then we're going to kind of jump into any questions that you all have. And some of you've asked questions all along the way, and that's been great. That's made it very fun and interactive for us. But if you have any other questions that you've been thinking about that have been burning in you to ask, feel free to go ahead.
And I think too that, the thing with Swivl in all these experiences that we've done is really, it can be used in different ways, and even in different, and how it's set up in classrooms can be used different depending on what's exactly going on in the classroom. So it's not like a one size necessarily fits all, because it can really be tailored to what you need as far as what you're doing with it, whether it's out in the field, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in a virtual experience at a planetarium or that kind of stuff. The awkward silence, I know, as we're waiting for if there's any questions in the chat box.
I'm laughing. I was going to say, I'm definitely a teacher at heart. I have no problems with the awkward silence. I'll wait you out.
Well, I'll ramble. I'll ramble. And probably tell bad jokes. So stop.
We will definitely do that. Okay, no questions but a comment. I'm thrilled to have these 2 presenters to support. Oh, thank you, Anne.
Thanks, Anne.
We want to be able to include students who can't get in person. Yes. Even if they're in face-to-face, is it realistic to do a lab using Swivl outdoors or in a greenhouse? Definitely. One of our high schools, I say our because I'm still very close. They're near and dear to my heart. You can't spend almost a decade with people, working with people, and they not be near and dear to your heart. But one of the high schools actually in the area actually has a hydroponics greenhouse, and it's kind of down a hill. And so when students can't get out there, that they definitely set it up. They have it. And what's even better about that one is they also work with the culinary. So not only do students grow some of the things that are actually the culinary actually uses in the, down in their classroom to actually cook and serve, but they also grow some and they actually do give to the community as well. And so they've used the Swivl in that scenario, which I thought was really cool. Students have used it to talk about how they go from the greenhouse to the table. So
the only thing I'll point out about that too is, if you're planning on like a live demo and it's out away from a school building or wherever your Wi-Fi normally is, you'll want to make sure that you have some type of connection to Wi-Fi, whether it be a hotspot from, if you're like us and you have a wonderful IT department who has those hotspots that can lend out, that's great too. Or I always use my phone hotspot as well, but that's just something to consider as well.
I was laughing. I thought you were going to tell them about our story. So we thought about that, and we were actually out at, I think this is the False Cape one. Jennifer alluded to it when she said, "Yeah, we did a training," and I went, "Yeah, that went kind of interesting." It was one of those moments where we had the hotspot. If things were going to work, nothing worked. So we ended up having to use my phone to run the Zoom and use her phone to run something. It became one of those weird things, but it was on the fly, kind of solving the technology, but it all worked out and it was really, really great. But that's why I will definitely say before doing that, I agree with Jennifer. Please test it out. Go to the location and test it out on a day with the worst possible weather, especially if you're going to be outside.
And don't be petrified. I think, once you kind of get your hands on Swivl and really kind of get into it, it becomes a pretty seamless process once you kind of become acclimated to exactly how it's used. And like I said, with our division, we did quite a bit of extensive training and created documents and such, and used the things that Swivl also had, which really are great with step-by-step kind of guides on how to be a Swivl whisperer.
But I will say this, if you have questions and you want to try something out, the best thing to do is definitely try it and to reach out and say, "Hey, do you have time? I'm in this location. I'm going to try this out. Can you tell me what it looks like?" Allie's gotten that call from me a couple of times. This is not working. And she's been great about, yes, I will solve this. If I can't, I will find somebody who can solve it. I will tell you, and this is just not the plug, just being honest. We had a video, all the videos from that day uploaded beautifully to the teams. I had one video that did not work. Just one. She actually put me in touch with all the different people and we were going to get this solved, and we ended up actually solving it. It took a few days, but once we got it solved, it was like, oh, okay, that was easy. And it was easy. It was an easy solution, but I met a lot of other wonderful people at Swivl all trying to solve that problem. So they are definitely going to be able to help you, and don't be petrified at all. And of course, you can always reach out to Jennifer and myself. We like doing weird things like that. I mean, we don't say no. You can tell us. We're still trying to figure out a way to get it in other locations. We haven't figured that out yet.
Specifically someplace tropical, preferably.
Yes. We'll do caves and other things too. I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but.
And just to kind of end with this caveat too, we've shared kind of just some of the uses of Swivl. There are some other components that are definitely worth checking into as well. Their web-based platform as well. And then Venicia kind of alluded to the Teams aspect. We won't go into that today, but just, be aware that there are multiple other kind of features that go along with Swivl.
I will say this, if you're looking to integrate things like that, definitely try it out. I think it'll work. But like I said, try it out and also be comfortable with going, that did not work so well. So get wonderful critical friends to kind of hang out with you and be able to go from there. Recordings are made in Zoom, even if not teaching live.
I mean, you can definitely record in Zoom, even if you're not teaching live. Like I've recorded in Zoom for, other things and not teaching live. But, Swivl also has its own recording feature too that you can use. So you don't have to necessarily be in Zoom if you're not teaching live. You could record yourself directly in the Swivl app without having to go through Zoom. But if you're comfortable with Zoom and love recording there too, that's always an option as well.
I will say I've enjoyed, I'm a little opposite with that. If I'm doing live, I would say yes, that's been fun. But I found that the Teams actually does a better job of recording, and I'm able to make any modifications that I need to make. Yeah, he remembers that. Yes, I'm able to make any modifications to the video I need to make, versus once you've done it in Zoom, you're kind of stuck. But if there's
Yeah.
a section I need to eliminate, or I need to take out, I need to do some edits, it's easier to do that in the Teams. So that's just my little.
No, that's important to note.
Mhm.
I'll add to that too, right? You know, the beauty of using our tools and our platform too gives you that more immersive classroom experience, right? Versus just a little box of your face in Zoom. It's really kind of bringing you into the classroom environment. There's a ton of resources has been shared as far as additional use cases with Swivl, specifically when it comes to professional development, self-reflection, instructional coaching. So there's so much to be done with Swivl, and we are so grateful for. Were you going to say something, Jennifer?
Yes, I just remembered something else. We have used Swivl too with professional development, where we've had teachers, have to zoom in from a location versus live in person. So we've used it as far as professional development goes as well. Just putting that in there as well. What's another thing that I?
So there's
Yeah.
the live professional development piece, right, and the asynchronous too. So much to be done, and so much.
And to answer you, John, the swivel in a tree, we were actually in the forest at Hoffler Creek. So that was a swivel in a tree, and swivel at sea. It was a stretch with the sea. You're right, because we were actually on a creek,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we've done it at the beach. So honestly, that one in Falls Cape, when we had it set up on the beach, that's your sea. So
Maybe
we
the
did.
next thing I'm trying to convince Venicia is maybe, swivel by, diving out of a plane, in the sky, swivel in the sky. But I haven't convinced her quite yet. of
We've
that.
done indoor skydiving. We are not doing skydiving for real. Not right now. Yes, space, here we come. Yes, that would be next. That would be next. You're right.
So if there are no other questions, are there any other questions? I'm just looking. Oh, heavy surf drowning out the audio. So yes, I would imagine loud waves will definitely inhibit audio. But ideally you'd be at the beach on a calm day.
Well, that was why I mentioned that when we were at one of our locations, we did experience that. And so what we ended up having to do was actually move the swivel. We did get some of the waves at the beginning of it, and then we just kind of paused it, moved the swivel over to a different area, and finished the rest of the recording so you could hear the teachers very clearly over it. And that was one of the days. It wasn't live. That one was one of the ones we were doing a pre-recording of. So yes, that was one of the issues that we did run into.
There any other questions before we wrap up? I do have kind of an exciting treat to share, but I'll wait until we're done.
Oh, practical distance limit to the marker.
So
I feel like we got pretty far in those canoes.
We
away
did.
From, yeah.
In kayaks, we went in all different directions.
Yeah. I don't know exact distance.
outside, you'd be limited a bit more, right? Because you have the elements of the earth around you. But in a classroom, we say around 6 to 8 feet, just to kind of depending on the environment, as far as like clear, true, really crystal clear audio.
And I will say it was really clear, as long as we were on a creek, so that was calm water. And if you're on calm water and you're doing that, not a problem. However, if you are like at the beach, anything with any surf, things like that, yeah, you're gonna get that kind of noise and feedback.
So you absolutely, thank you for that question. You absolutely can adjust marker sensitivity. So depending on how much gain you're trying to, receive and pick up, you can do that with our tools. Get to have. Oh, are you trying to turn your video on, Ms. Ang? If that's the case, it's because this is a webinar format, so you're limited. Just because we're in a webinar, just our panelists and hosts can be seen via video. However, if you have a question, please type it in the chat. And while we're waiting for you to type, I just want to, because I know we're kind of wrapping up on the hour here, I just want to say thank you so much to Dr. Ferrell and Dr. Thomason for their time today and their insight and all of the wonderful and exciting things they're doing with Swivl. Yes, Ms. Ang, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, because we are in a webinar, although Vince, I don't think you can turn on sound and video for our participants, but don't leave just yet. I wanted to kind of inform everyone that we have future events coming up. I don't know, maybe Dr. Thomason or Dr. Ferrell, you can share slide 17 with us just so we can give everyone a refresher of your contact information should anyone want to reach out to you via social media or email. So that's their information if you want to take a screenshot. In addition, if you want to stay in the loop with Swivl and join us for other events and webinars, please, if you wouldn't mind switching to the next slide, please follow us on social media, join us on our website, and sign up for our newsletter, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and our YouTube channel. And it looks like I'm just going to double check. I'm going to check the chat here. And I just want to say, surprise, I'm very lucky. I am very excited to be the one to share with you. You've stuck with us through this entire webinar. So if you are joining us today in honor of Teacher Appreciation Week, we want to give every participant who has stayed from the beginning to the end of this webinar a $25 DoorDash gift card. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service as a teacher and your work, all the wonderful work you do with your students. So thank you for everything you do as educators. You will receive a gift card at the email address you provided within the registration link when you provided your email address to register for this webinar. So please look out for that from us within the next 24 to 48 hours in your email address. If you don't receive it, please reach out to us, reach out to our support team. Myself, my colleague Vince, we can be reached at Allie@swivl.com and Vince@swivl.com. But we really, really appreciate your time and hope that you can enjoy that little treat from us as a thank you. Is there anything else you two lovely ladies want to share with the group prior to kind of signing off?
Just thank you and happy Teacher Appreciation Week. You know, having been there, I recall what it is like to be in the classroom and all the work that goes into that, both, you know, during hours and after and on the weekends. So we really appreciate all that you do. Definitely, there's not enough words I could say to say thank you so much for all that you're doing.
Definitely. Thank you. Keep trying, doing different things. You'll learn different things and you'll enjoy it and your students will enjoy it. So just have a great rest of your week.
And the countdown to summer is on, right? It's just a few more weeks, you guys. You can make it and get a little bit of a break.
Thanks so much, everyone, for your time. Have a wonderful rest of your week and a happy almost weekend. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah.
Yes.